Well, everyone, just making sure you know you're in the right place. This is AI for Communities. This is being hosted by San Mateo County Libraries and Women in AI Ethics. Who are we? Women in AI Ethics, and I am, as Van said, I am the founder, was started in 2018 with a list I published, which was the 100 Brilliant Women in AI Ethics list. It was a public response to the frequently a very common excuse you hear in Silicon Valley and other tech industry, overall the tech industry, that we don't know any qualified women. When you ask them, why aren't there more women on your development teams, or why don't you invite women to your events? And the thing is, there are qualified women. The list was a way of showing the world that we are here, we are experts, we've always been here. So our mission is to make AI and the technology industry overall more diverse, more ethical, and make it more inclusive. We elevate voices by and work by brilliant women in this space, and I'll share some of their work with you as we go along. Our website is womeninaiethics.org. You can also reach me at diversityinai@gmail.com. I'll share this at the end as well. Just know I'm not here to represent any tech company. I'm pretty much technology agnostic. In fact, I'm a little skeptical of technology. So I'm here not to show, but to share what I've learned, share what I know, and also answer any questions if I can. And with that, let's get started. So I'm sure you've been following the news, and it has been artificial intelligence, for better or worse, has been in the news a lot. And it can make it a little bit hard when you read so much news and the headlines and the news media is saturated with news about artificial intelligence. It's hard to tell, is this reality or hype? So today we are going to demystify some of the hype behind artificial intelligence. Will help make sense for what lies behind the curtains. This GIF is of the Wizard of Oz. That on the surface, everything looks bright and shiny and fantastical. It looks magical. But when you look behind, when you pull back this curtain and you look behind the scenes, it's usually an old man just pulling all the levers, but not entirely, but it's very similar to what's happening in artificial intelligence today. So today's topic is AI safety. Well, here's the agenda. This is what I'll be sharing with you. We'll have a quick introduction to AI ethics just to ground everybody in what does AI ethics even mean, because there's so many different definitions. And I'll share with you what we follow, what we believe in. We'll talk about benefits and not versus harms. There's no binary, here's benefits, here's harms. There are benefits and there are harms, and we'll talk about both of them. We'll talk about how and we can build that pathway and get on the pathway to more responsible and ethical AI. I'll summarize what we learned, and then we'll have additional learning resources that you can continue your learning journey with. With that said, let's get started. Introduction to AI ethics. For a lot of folks, when you think about AI ethics, it consists of all sorts of different things, but our perspective is that it's not about good or bad. It's not a binary. We're not here to pass moral judgment on goodness and badness of people, or this one is evil or that one is so and so. That's not what we're here to do. We are acknowledging here, by being part of this conversation and being here and even engaging in conversations about ethics, we're acknowledging that technology is not neutral, it's not objective, no matter what Silicon Valley tells you. From design to deployment, it reflects the values of those who build it and the values of those who fund it. And this will become more clearer as we go through this journey together and rest of this class, which is for an hour. Very simply put, when we talk about ethics, we are talking about fair distribution of benefits and prevention of harms. And even if we can't prevent all harms, we want to at least try to minimize harms to humans. So benefits and harms. Let's see what that's about. So there have been a lot of advances in AI. And if you've been on this journey with me, if you took class 1 and class 2, no worries if you haven't, but you have been on this journey where you saw where we started with computing, right? There was manual computing. The first computers were human beings, and most of them were women. And since then, we've seen the evolution of computers, the machines that were developed to do the computing, and they replaced the human computers. But then we evolved to programming, and then programming led to artificial intelligence, machine learning models, and so on. So a lot of these developments can be attributed, if you remember, don't worry, there's no quiz, but you might recall there were 3 things that we talked about. Algorithms have become more and more powerful. That have led to a lot of advancements in this field. Data. Because of first internet and then social media, there's so much information out there that people are willingly, people like you and me, are willingly putting our personal information, our photographs, our children's pictures, pictures of our homes, and pictures of our vacations. All that information is readily available for anyone to look at on social media, right? We're all out there putting data out there. That's the data that's fueling a lot of these machine learning models. That lies the heart of every machine learning model that's out there. Again, don't believe the hype. That's pretty much how these models work. Computing power. Machines are becoming more and more powerful. So if you think about computing power back when, say, maybe 10, 15 years ago, if you think about the kind of machines we use, even computers that we use, those have become so powerful. So you can imagine how the computer power has grown exponentially from the industrial strength computers, which are used to process a lot of this data, process a lot of these algorithms, because without computing power, you could not process a lot of that data that's being churned out every day and used to train these models. So then let's look at the benefits, right? Everybody's talking about it. Are there benefits to artificial intelligence, generative AI, which is in the news? Absolutely, yes. Lots of benefits. It can help you do tasks easily. This is an example which I saw on Google Drive. Every time I go in there, it gives me this suggestion. It says, oh, can I help you organize, right? So it's basically wants to help me organize. It can generate templates. It can create sample content for you. You can create a marketing campaign tracker. So it helps you create templates. It can help you create content. The kind of content it can create is right on the screen. It's very creative. Beautiful images that you're seeing all over the internet these days. So you can see a lot of them are created with generative AI tools, which are available freely. There's DALL-E and Stability AI. There's Midjourney, for example. There are a lot of companies who are creating a lot of these tools, which you can use to create some of these images. It's creating a lot of opportunities because human beings are very savvy. So they're figuring out how to use ChatGPT and other generative AI tools to, earn money. Someone actually published, there's so many people I'm hearing are publishing entire novels, entire books through these tools. And again, I can't comment on the quality of a lot of this content because I already feel there's so much content out there. A lot of that content on the internet is not good. It's not great content. So it's when people say, oh, we can generate more content and here's more content that this tool can generate. I don't necessarily see that as a positive, but of course, if you can make money off of it and that's your side hustle, it's a side gig, hey, more power to you. But the quality is not always great. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. I'm seeing people have jobs like they proofread ChatGPT content. There's actually a job and there's actually people are putting that in their resume. So it's creating a lot of new opportunities, a lot of new roles. So yes, there are definitely some benefits to this technology. Funding. Okay, so this is interesting. I saw this on LinkedIn recently. One of the VCs had posted this, and there are so many others who said, and this VC said, as long as you're doing something with AI, we can give you millions of dollars. Yep, come to us, we'll fund you. And the problem with that is great news if you have something with some product you're selling or some AI startup you're running with, and you're looking for funding, great. Fantastic, great time to raise money. However, as you might recall, last time I shared with you about 40% of European startups that say they are AI do not actually use AI. So a lot of that is also just because something is said to have AI does not actually mean it has AI. So I feel like it's like right now we are in the AI hype cycles where anything with AI is getting funded and they're just throwing money at it. But sooner or later that is going to start settle down, because all technologies at some point settle down when you actually have to show results. That's about when it tapers off. So we've seen the show before. This is not our first rodeo, but this is what's happening right now. And hopefully you're one of those people who can responsibly take advantage of the wave that we are riding right now. So let's look at algorithms, right? Because these are at the very core of a lot of machine learning models. Algorithms are problematic. So we talked about how there are benefits, but here's some of the downsides. Algorithms can be powerful, but they also can contain a lot of bias. So now I'll share with you how. There's an MIT student, you might have seen this in the news. She asked AI, one of those AI free tools, to make her headshot more professional. It gave her lighter skin and blue eyes. And that basically is an example, as she shared, of how these technologies, how artificial intelligence can have biases embedded. And that comes from a place of, there are other biases, but that comes from multiple places. We'll talk about that later. I don't want to go too fast, but this also is embedded, not in just the algorithm, is embedded in your data sets. And we'll share more about that a little later. Stereotypes. There are a lot of stereotypes that are embedded in these systems. And this is an example of, I used a prompt nurse. If you look, as you might recall from last week's generative AI class, a prompt is a text, a small piece of text that you put into these systems, and that prompt generates either text or it can generate images. So I asked Crayon to generate images of a nurse. You see something, you see a pattern here. So this is what's called like stereotypes that embedded. This is another type of bias which is embedded in a lot of these systems because they're trained on biased data sets. So when they reflect that image, those images, and what they're generating images, it's a reflection of the data sets they're trained on, which in turn are a reflection of the world we live in, which is stereotypes, racist tropes, so on. Another big emerging area of concern is misinformation and disinformation. So here's an example. Again, you might have seen this in the news already, but there was a professor who flunked his entire class because he took papers from his students and he fed it to ChatGPT because he thought it was very smart. He would just ask ChatGPT if ChatGPT actually wrote those papers. The problem is, these machine learning models are not these are not human beings, and these are machines. They're dumb machines. And as much as we are sold on their sophistication and how wonderful and magical they are, they're not really that magical. So what ChatGPT, the output that came out of it, said, yeah, I wrote this. This is my output. And it turns out it wasn't ChatGPT output. When you trust dumb machines to tell you the truth, you are going to go down the wrong path. ChatGPT particularly has an issue of just generating fake information or disinformation, because the way these models are constructed, they're constructed to please, as in give answers. So when it's faced with a dilemma, when it's asked a question, it will try to answer the best it can based on how it's been trained. So therein lies the problem. They were all flunked, and I think it was under review. The last time I checked, he had to go back and rethink his with the output he got from this ChatGPT, because that was not true. Hallucination. What these machine learning models, these large language models also do, they also hallucinate. What that means is it makes up information. The systems make up information. One example, and there are so many, there's a growing database of a lot of these fake news or disinformation that they're generating. ChatGPT invented a sexual harassment scandal, and it named an actual human, real law professor as accused. And you can see why this can be problematic, right? If you are putting in, people are treating ChatGPT and other large language models as they are search engines. They're not. They're trained on a massive data set, massive, like huge, but they're not kept updated. Sometimes, again, when there are gaps in the information, gaps in the data set, what ChatGPT does, it fills in the gap. What it fills in the gap with is anybody's guess. And therein lies the problem. That's hallucination. It just plugs in information from wherever it in their database, in its knowledge set. I've tried it multiple times with different research papers. It just makes up random names, random people, assigns attributes that this research paper was written by some random person that may not exist, completely erasing the person who actually wrote that paper, and so on. So those are some real world problems with these models. So let's dig deeper into the data sets, because data sets themselves are so problematic. Do follow the work by Dr. Abiba Berhane, and the name's on the screen right there. She and her colleagues are doing some amazing work of digging into a lot of the large data sets, and they digging into these massive data sets and looking at what's in there, because not every company, not every tech company reveals its data sources. A lot of this data comes from just crawl from the internet. So this is one common crawl data set. They looked at a subset of this data set. Now, common crawl is just scraping off the internet. It's all the information that's out there, and that's used as a source for training large language models. And they've done similar research on others as well. So let me show you what they found out. So they looked inside and they saw this portrait of an astro. Let me see. Oh, let's start with our former president. So on the left, you have accurately labeled image, right? This is a portrait of a former president of the United States. But if you look at the right, there are images that are actually labeled with, this is the portrait of the first ever illegal president of the United States, born in Kenya. If you're a rational human being, you can decipher between, yeah, one is correct, one is not, one is clearly racist, is clearly incorrect, and so on, wrong, and so forth. But this is what happens when you use internet as your source of data, your source of truth. You can get the good, you can get the bad, you can get ugly, you can get reality, you can just get fake news, you can get people's just inner biases, right? Human beings are flawed, and there you go. And this is reflected in the data sets. And now these data sets are used to train large language models, and those large language models then spit out content, and that content then becomes problematic, which is problematic. So here's another example. I talked to you about how these also reflect stereotypes. So this is where the stereotypes and the biases are coming from. This is the next layer down where they looked at, again, this is Dr. Berhane's work, and I do have a link to that research. It's open and free. Go read it in your free time if you if you're curious, you want to see what else is in there. It's all in the resources online. So on the left, it's accurately labeled. This is a portrait of an astronaut with the American flag, right? There's American flag in the background. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, it's labeled in a it's reflecting a lot of stereotypical and very misogynistic tendencies that people have. And it is reflecting that by saying, this is not labeling the picture as an astronaut, but saying this is a smiling housewife in an orange jumpsuit. This is how our human biases manifest in data sets, and these manifest in your large machine learning models, your large language models in AI. And this is where the problems are ethical. This is a huge area of study. There are a lot of women, a lot of people of color, a lot of scholars who have been studying this for a while. So as much as we think these machine learning models are great, they're powerful and so on, they also have these inherent issues. So keep going. So the data sets, like there were so many. If you're wondering where these data sets comes from, who gathers all of these, and one the better control. So here's the thing: a lot of big universities, like if you look at the screen, this first one, the online image database, that online image database, which will remove 600,000 pictures, is the golden standard of databases that I talked about in the last two classes. It is called the ImageNet. That was actually built by somebody who was at Princeton and is now at Harvard, Faithful Lee. Her team pulled this together using contract and freelancers from a place called Mechanical Turk, which is owned by Amazon. So when they created this database, they put together this massive database, but there wasn't any kind of governance around it. So then another project came along and they started looking into what's in there. They found 600,000 pictures, which were racist. They were labeling people of color with slurs. There were just women with derogatory tones. There was just so much like problematic content in there. They had to remove. Who knows how much more is in there. MIT had to remove their huge data set, which was teaching AI to use racist, misogynistic slurs. And then Duke University had to also get rid of surveillance footage. So you'd think these big universities would know better and they should not be doing these engaging problematic behaviors, but that's not the case. Everybody's moving so fast, as fast as they can. These are the kind of issues that they're completely glossing over. So now here we are 5, 10, 15 years later, now realizing these are issues, trying to fix it, and which is why I truly admire a lot of the AI researchers who are working on fixing these problems, which they didn't create. It wasn't their problem, but they're trying to fix it for us. Not all issues are technological necessarily with AI. It's not. There are some issues and problems which are even outside of the technology itself, but it's an impact. It is clearly is a clear impact from those machine learning models, from these large language models. So the big one is environmental impact. And the resources consumed. So environmental impact, like if you think about, I always give an example of your own computer, right? I don't know about yours. I have an older computer and it heats up a lot. Older computers used to have a little fan which was running. Even these old new ones do. But the thing is, they generate a lot of heat. Now, I have a tiny machine, and I'm only I don't use that much data. I don't do that much computing. So it's a very basic laptop that I use. But imagine now that to the power 1,000, 10,000, a million, right? You're trying to process so much data. So there are massive data sets, data centers out there. If you look at the image right here, if you look at it, it's a very, how do I put this? Complex process. It's very resource intensive. A lot of these data processing centers where this data is processed use up electricity, clean reservoir water. It causes your climate, basically it causes warming of the environment as well around them. So it has a massive impact on the environment around it. So the environmental is something that a lot of folks are studying and taking more seriously, because if you haven't noticed that it is getting very warm and there have been unseasonable weather patterns, there have been very extreme weather patterns. So this is also contributing to a lot of it, and which means we need to be not only aware, also make sure that we are addressing these issues. So moving on. Unintended consequences. I don't believe that anyone went down this path saying, yes, we are going to destroy the environment or we're going to cause global warming, any of that. No one goes down the path thinking we are going to do bad, gets up in the morning, says, okay, we're going to do bad things today. A lot of these harms are unintended consequences, because when you're trying to go so fast, you sometimes forget to pay attention to what could possibly go wrong. So these are some of the harms that are coming to light. We talked about algorithms, we talked data and computing, but there are some more. Which is today's all about AI safety, in case you didn't, in case you've just joined us. So we are talking a lot about ethics of these technologies. So 3 that are coming to light is human workers, fraud, fakery, and manipulation. What is the toll on human workers? Let's look at that. Displacement. So first is across the board. There are companies, industries that are replacing people with AI. If they're not doing it now, they're trying to do it. When we talk about augmentation, the path from augmentation to total automation, it's really not that far off. So Microsoft is trying to replace journalists with robots. A lot of news media agencies are also doing that. There are a lot of US workers who are exposed to AI on their jobs. I was reading this report. Again, the link will be shared with you after this. Is about 1/5 all workers have high exposure jobs, and women, Asian, college educated, higher paid workers are more exposed. But people have this sense of hope that maybe they won't be affected as much. How many humans does it take to make tech human? There's an entire industry behind AI. That's just behind AI. So as magical as it sounds, there are humans training the data sets, there are humans training even Siri or Alexa that you use. They're human beings who actually train a lot of these large language models, the voice recognition models. They do the data labeling. GPS systems also utilize human labor. Maybe those jobs are being created, but maybe they're not created in our backyards. They're created in another country, another place. We don't know where they're being created, but we do know that they're going to places where labor is cheap. AI could replace about 300 million jobs. Again, I'm not saying that that is a McKinsey report. Which ones those are, what kind of jobs they are, there's no clarity, but that's something that's evolving. Will it create new jobs? Definitely. Will it displace and transform jobs? Also, yes. Right now, what's in the news is as actors are striking for AI protections, companies are listing AI jobs, which are 6 figures. So the thinking is pretty much based on the way these jobs are listed is the belief seems to be that if these companies can replace, say, 100 jobs with one model, they much rather or one person, that one job basically might be at a higher paid job, but then over time, even that job might become redundant. But that's basically where we are headed, which is why if you're wondering why these actors are striking, so many reasons. Where's AI protection? Because they're being replaced by these technologies, and there are also attempts to take some of their voice, their likeness, and use it in perpetuity without paying them. So definitely a space worth watching, because I do feel that the canaries in the coal mine, because the way the film industry or the Hollywood goes the other industries. So displacement, this is an interesting insight from the Pew Research study that I shared with you. It's that workers who are most exposed are most confident that they will not be replaced. They have little fear, especially college graduates, because a graduate degree is supposed to protect us, right? It's supposed to keep us safe from displacement. So that, I think, was very interesting, that even when there's data that shows that certain jobs have high exposure to being replaced, people who have those jobs are still not there yet. They don't believe that data yet. And especially in tech, I understand tech workers are an optimistic bunch. They don't believe that AI will affect them. It's going to help. Finance workers also, which is very interesting, because I think finance has always used AI a lot more. They've always been using algorithms much longer than many of the other industries. Perhaps that's the reason they're so optimistic, but I just thought that was interesting. We'll keep going. Fraud, fakery, and manipulation. None of this should be new to you, because deepfakes are here. They're everywhere. You can't open a news headline in any news site today without hearing something about someone using deepfake tools, and there's so many of them, and deepfakes have become so easier to create. And of course, that is not the precedent, but just to give you an example, how easy it is to create these deepfakes. So look at this. This is a normal looking gentleman. He's most definitely not Tom Cruise, but there you go. You can actually now recreate yourself, at least online, into any celebrity you choose. The panicky call from a relative. It could be a thief using a voice clone. So FTC is warning, I think trillions of dollars in fraud is at risk from fraud because a lot of folks are already getting calls from fake phone calls with a voice clone of a relative, like a niece or a daughter or granddaughter, who's calling this older person and saying, hey, grandma, can you send me some money? I'm stuck here, and so on. So these are on the rise because the technology is here, it's free, and the quality is really good. Hard to make out the difference between whether it's you, whether it's really a relative or fake. So watch out. This is really tragic. And again, I'm not going to attribute blame solely on technology. There's so many factors involved. But a Belgian man was chatting with a chat bot, and then he died by suicide after the chat, and his wife blamed the chat bot. See, here's the thing. These technologies can be manipulative, not because they have any sense of what they're doing. These are not sentient or rational like beings. They're machines. They've been coded a certain way, and some of that can lend itself to manipulation. And they're trying to be helpful. They're designed to be helpful. So see, if you need it, there was actually a grocery chain. There was a grocery chain app based on artificial intelligence, one of the machine learning models, and it gave our recipes on how to make yummy mustard gas, which can actually kill you. So again, being helpful, not understanding, not having any context can be dangerous, can have dangerous consequences. So keep going. So how do we get to a pathway to responsible and ethical AI future, right? Because that's where we want to be, not in this doom and gloom, in this nightmare scenario. So there are 6 phases, and there are many more that we want to avoid this, train wreck or the car wreck. So the pace of advancements is going really fast, right? The guardrails and the tools are barely keeping up. And I've researched and I'm looking at what developments are happening. And I'll be honest with you, these tools are just inadequate. So many of those guardrails are still under discussion and negotiation. A lot of tools there are some tools coming out for artists, but they're not necessarily like for the average user and so on. So it is concerning. But there are other ways that we can keep ourselves safe, and I will share those with you as the space evolves. I'm sure we'll have more sessions on this, and I'll be able to share more of those tools with you. So first is safety first. I'll walk you through some of the basics of safety, AI safety tools. There are some tools. I'll share those with you. Not a huge long list, but there are some tools out there. Reskilling. Cannot emphasize this enough, and I'll share with you why. Activism works. Regulations, and last but not the least, I cannot understate the value of staying engaged. So let's start with safety first. What is out there? Well, how can you keep yourself safe? So first of all, if you don't believe me, you're like, why should I listen to me? I listen to Google, right? Sundar Pichai, smart guy, right? Like there he is, CEO of Google and maker of these technologies, tell staff, do not put confidential information into these chatbots. Do not tell them your deepest, darkest secrets. Do not put your social security number in. Do not put your any personal information, because some of these, even account information is being traded on the dark web right now, because there's no security around any of this, right? They've just thrown these tools out there. You're on your own, so do not put your information in there. Just use the tools for benign things like, crafting maybe some fiction, novel, writing content, task planning, sure, but don't put personal information. There is a SIFT model, and I'm trying to see why this is not showing up. Don't share personal information. There is actually a SIFT model, which is not showing up right now on my screen. I'm just having some technical issues. The SIFT model is, again, it's an acronym created by media literacy folks when they were doing online literacy and this was created by a professor at University of Washington, and it is an older model which helps you think through different headlines that you read online. The first one is stop, and then I will have to pull that up because I'm spacing is late at night here in New York, but always stop before sharing any kind of information, resharing. Stop, interrogate, what is the source for this, who is sharing it. Make sure you're basically looking at other sources of information. Don't just believe everything you read online, and then you want to trace back where the source is before you decide whether or not this is real. The link is in there, and that will again take you to the 4-step process, but this is something just being more engaged reader. So don't share private information, train yourself. I have a bunch of tests. And again, I don't know, technology is not being my friend today, but there are tests that you can take to train yourself to see, is this fake? Is this not fake? And so on. So there are training tools. I've put them in the resources. You can just go in and test and see how good you are if you can actually spot a fake in there. So then the last one, we will keep moving forward. So there are tools. Like I said, there's a limited set of tools out there that I could find, and they're still new, being developed every day. But this is one. There is a browser plugin, and this is for the media folks. When media is trying to figure out, right? There's a European project to help journalists. So when they are trying to figure out, is this news fake or not fake, because there's so much information being shared out there, there's actually a plugin which goes into your browser, and you can plug it in, and it will help you figure out if something is fake or not fake. There's a link for it. It's a project created by in the EU. It's called INVID, European project, and the link is in the resources. Then there are AI detection tools as well, but again, they're not great. So this one, right? So what I did was I took one of those images. You might remember in the last class, I said, can you tell this is fake, not fake? This is a fake image. So what I did was, this was created by StyleGAN, which is a NVIDIA site. So I took this image and I put it into an AI detector, right? The input is likely to be 99% AI generated. But then when I try to put some other tools, it would not give me, again, technical glitches, but there are times when I plugged in some other images and it said it was not AI generated, but it was AI generated. So again, these tools are not always accurate. I shared that example of how you put something in ChatGPT, it just says, yeah, sure, I created that content. On the other hand, there are so many tools which say they can detect whether or not something is AI generated, and they cannot, which is why I'm not recommending any tools here, because the accuracy is so iffy. But I would highly recommend generate some fake images, create some content using the generative AI tools, test those tools yourself. I have some links in the resources. Test it, see what you come up with. The best way to learn something is always test. So there are AI poisoning tools. So there is just the technological solutions also to this deep fake and misinformation issue. So AI poisoning tools are ways that a lot of researchers have, that some researchers have come up with, where you can introduce some noise or little perturbation, as they call it. There's a technical term for it, but you're introducing some noise into your image, your content. Just a little bit, is just so slight enough that even though it doesn't change your image, it looks exactly the same, but it fools the AI model so that it cannot capture your content, that it cannot replicate your content, that it cannot take your content into its database and recreate it. So there are different ways that you can protect your images, your content, from manipulation, from misuse, from being taken into one of these machine learning models and misused. Anonymizing tools are also a great way, I feel, a great use of technology. They're used in documentaries. So the way it works is, say you are trying to interview someone like who wants to maintain the confidentiality, maybe their life's in danger, then you can use an anonymizing tool, which will keep the person's the facial expressions, but at the same time you can't tell who that person is. So it anonymizes it, but it doesn't make it static. It just gives you the emotional engagement that you're looking for. So it's been used, and actually the person who used to also won an award for it under technology. So it's been witness.org is an organization which has some of these tools. So I do have a link to them as well. So this is a Carla Ortiz picture. This is basically how Glazed is one of those technologies where, again, artists are using different types of tools, and Glazed is another one of the methodologies that they're using in order to protect their images from use as well. And there was actually a new paper that was just published on it, and I'm happy to share that as well. But we'll keep moving forward because we have limited time, and I do want to save some time for Q&A. I cannot emphasize this enough. Get reskilled. Do not wait for somebody to come to you. There are a lot of free resources out there. Just go grab them. You showed up today. I am so happy that you showed up today because this is a free class. You're already way ahead of a lot of folks who are trying to figure out what's happening in the news, but you were proactive. You stepped up. I would highly recommend get some more skills. There are so many free courses out there. I have created a list of courses that you can take, which are all free. I don't believe like you should be spending money right now at this point. If you're just getting started, when you're ready and you think you want a career in this and you want to go deeper, then you can definitely, yes, go for some paid course, get the certification and so on. But Python is one of those the most popular languages out there. R, if you want to do statistics. We also have highly recommend following experts. Don't just listen to talking heads on television, because they have their own agendas. We do have like an entire directory full of women who actually work in this field. Do follow the experts. I've also given them, there's a list of books that I recommend as well. There are a lot of free courses online. There is a link in the resource list because you can take courses, you can take also read books. You're at a library. You should be looking up all these books. You have so much free stuff at the library, which is, I love libraries. Take advantage of that. And then what else works? Activism, definitely. I would definitely say activism is the way right now, because there's so much going on and regulation has not caught up yet. Being out there, and so Congress, okay, this is something you should know, and some of you may already know this, but not every bill gets passed. It is your politician, your elected representative's job to introduce bills that reflects and your view as the voters needs and your best interest. That's why they are in office. However, sometimes you try and introduce a bill. It may not go through. It may not get passed. You may not have the votes. So remember that it's an ongoing, it's not just one and done. It takes time. So Congress trying that, but sometimes you succeed. New York's anti-bias law just went into effect. I believe there's another law in California that also went into effect, which is, again, AI protection, anti-discrimination. So I feel like that's progress being made. But regulation by itself isn't enough. You also need to follow it up with some accountability. So we have some good guys. Lena Khan is a wonderful, she is definitely one of those people who believes that technology companies should be held accountable, that they should protect. She's out to protect us. There are other folks, her peers as well, like Rohit Chopra and others, who are trying to protect us. Rohit Chopra heads up the Consumer Protection Bureau, and he is, again, one of those people who's looking out for the little people like us. So moving on, last but not the least, I believe what's happening in Hollywood right now shows the power of solidarity, the power of like staying engaged, standing with each other, because technology can do a lot of great things, but as you saw, it can also harm certain communities. So it's not about, again, good or bad or evil or not. So it's making sure what technologies we are building or whatever we are deploying, that we are all engaged in the process of making sure that it is working for all of us, that it is minimizing the harms that are caused to all of us. So this is where we are. And it is also bringing the AI and discourse into mainstream, where people were just on the sidelines saying, I don't know what this means, and you're actually seeing what is happening is one very specific industry in a very public way. I will drop this link. I do want to pause now because I haven't been tracking time, but I do want to share this link with you. This is Carla Ortiz. You may know her already. She's amazing. She's a Puerto Rican artist. She's done some amazing work out there. And this is her giving testimony at a hearing. And I feel like if you have any confusion whatsoever as to what's going on with the artist in the film industry, why artists, writers, everybody up in arms, please do listen to this after after this session, after our Q&A. I think she explains it very well, beautifully, where the artists are coming from. So that's that. This is me. Yeah, done. You have resources that you can use to continue your learning journey. I also have a bi-weekly newsletter that I send out. If you're interested, I have the link below. You can just, again, it's free. I just put together the links I feel like the news article, resources, research papers, which I feel like would be helpful to you. And it goes on most Fridays, unless I'm traveling or something comes along and disrupts the schedule. So thank you again. I'm Mia Shadan. You have my email address, diversityina@gmail.com. You can also find out more about our work on womeninAIethics.org. Thank you.